The fishing rod slipped from Wyatt Callahan's hand the moment his daughter yelled, "Dad, there's someone over there." And when he turned, he saw her. A woman standing far too close to the edge of the lake in heels that didn't belong anywhere near mud. Wyatt's boots squelched as he stepped in front of his 6-year-old daughter, Macy, shielding her automatically. "Ma'am, you're gonna fall," he called out, not sure if she heard him over the wind sweeping across the water. The woman glanced over, dark sunglasses hiding half her face, blonde hair tucked beneath a cream baseball cap. "I wasn't planning on swimming today," she said, her voice smooth and amused. "Is this your spot?" Wyatt exhaled and glanced around the nearly empty lake. "I don't think anyone owns a patch of mud and mosquitoes." Macy tugged on his arm. "Dad, she's really pretty." The woman laughed and Wyatt felt his ears burn. "Well, thank you," she said, crouching slightly to Macy's level. "I like your overalls." "Are you catching anything?" Macy held up the empty bucket. "No, but Daddy says that's not the point." "That's right," Wyatt muttered, reeling in the line he dropped. "It's not about the fish, it's about the quiet." The woman looked at him again, tilting her head slightly. "That's rare." "Someone who's okay with quiet." Wyatt didn't know how to respond to that, so he nodded toward the log nearby. "You're welcome to sit, if you can survive the bugs." To his surprise, she stepped around the mud without hesitation and perched on the log, crossing her legs carefully. "I've survived worse." Macy plopped beside her on the ground with no hesitation. "What's your name?" "Elira." She took off her sunglasses and smiled. "What's yours?" "Macy, my dad's Wyatt. We come here every Saturday 'cause it's free." Wyatt winced. "Macy, it's okay," Elira said gently, her eyes on Macy. "Free is good. Some of the best things in life are free." Wyatt wasn't sure why, but he liked her immediately. Maybe it was the way she didn't flinch at his daughter's bluntness, or how she didn't look at him like he was some sad case for being out here in a flannel shirt with worn boots and a rusting pickup parked by the woods. They stayed for hours. Elira didn't talk much about herself, but she asked about Macy's school, about Wyatt's favorite fishing spots growing up, and she laughed when Macy told her that Wyatt once fell into the lake because he tried to save a frog. When the sun dipped low behind the trees and the sky turned orange, Elira stood and brushed off her jeans. "I should go," Macy frowned. "Wait, come back next week," Wyatt straightened. "You don't have to, I want to." Elira looked at him just briefly. "If that's okay," he nodded once. "Sure, same time." She smiled again, and this time it felt different. Real. Warm. Macy waved as she walked toward a sleek black car tucked off the road. Wyatt's brows furrowed. "That's not exactly a local car," he murmured. Macy shrugged. "Maybe she rents it." He didn't think much more of it until the following Saturday came, and Elira returned this time with a small cooler of lemonade and snacks that Macy declared were fancy daddy, and a blanket that looked like it didn't belong anywhere near dirt. Week after week, she came back, sometimes in jeans, sometimes in crisp clothes, but always with a smile for Macy and a quiet look for him. Wyatt found himself counting down the days until Saturday. He'd catch himself thinking about her when he was fixing cars during the week or folding Macy's laundry during the late nights. He didn't know what she did for work, and she never said. But then, neither did he. Their talk stayed safe, light. Fishing, childhood memories, favorite foods. But there were moments where her eyes lingered too long, or she'd laugh and glance away quickly, like she'd let something slip. Wyatt didn't push. He was a single dad with a mortgage he could barely afford and a daughter who already had too many questions about where her mom went. He didn't have space for mystery women with expensive cars and manicured nails. But still, he couldn't stop thinking about her. It wasn't until the 6th Saturday that things changed. They were sitting on the blanket. Macy had dozed off after a long afternoon of splashing in shallow water, and Wyatt found himself watching Elira instead of the lake. "You ever gonna tell me what you do?" he asked quietly. Elira didn't look away from the water. "You ever gonna tell me what you're afraid of?" That made him pause. "What makes you think I'm afraid of anything?" She finally looked at him. "You look at me like you're waiting for me to vanish." He didn't answer right away. "Then, people like you don't usually stick around. People like me. You smell like expensive perfume and bring bottled lemonade that probably costs more than my rent." Elira was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a thin leather wallet. She handed it to him. He frowned and opened it. Her ID read, Elira Hastings. But what caught his eye wasn't the name, it was the company card tucked in next to it, Hastings Ventures, CEO. He looked up slowly. You're a billionaire, she said quietly. Yeah, he swallowed. You're joking. I'm not. Wyatt stood abruptly, heart pounding. Why the hell are you here? She stood too. Because I wanted to be. You could be anywhere in the world and you're sitting on a muddy lakeside with me and my daughter. I like it here. No. No, this is some kind of game. What did you see the sad single dad and think, oh, let's slum it for a while? Her face fell. Is that what you think? I don't know what to think, Macy stirred, and Wyatt dropped his voice instantly, moving to kneel beside her, brushing her hair back. When he looked up again, Elira was already gathering her things. I didn't come here to mess with you, Wyatt. I came here because it's the first time in a long time I've felt real peace, and because I like your daughter. And because, she paused, swallowing, I like you. He stared at her, stunned. I won't come back if you don't want me to, she said quietly. But I meant what I said. The best things in life aren't bought. She turned and walked away, the leaves crunching beneath her heels. Wyatt stood there, heart racing, Macy leaning sleepily against him. Daddy, she mumbled. Yeah, Bug. Why did Elira leave? He didn't answer, because the truth was, he didn't know if he wanted her to. Macy fell asleep in the truck on the way home, her cheek pressed against the window, one hand still clutching the corner of the blanket Elira had brought. Wyatt didn't have the heart to pull it away from her. He drove in silence, every mile bringing a heavier weight to his chest. She was a billionaire. He didn't even know what that meant in real life, not really. He'd heard the word on the news, seen it on Forbes covers in checkout lines, but he never expected it to collide with his life like this. And not in the form of a woman who knew how to bait a hook and made his daughter laugh until she hiccuped. He pulled into the driveway of the small house he'd rented since Macy was born. The porch light flickered, and the siding needed repairs he couldn't afford. He sat behind the wheel for a long time before lifting Macy from the seat and carrying her inside. She stirred only once, mumbling something about pancakes and frogs. After settling her into bed, he stepped out onto the porch. The wind had picked up, stirring the wind chime his mother had hung when she was still alive. It clicked and clinked, too soft to interrupt his thoughts. What was he supposed to do now? He didn't want to believe Elira had lied to him. She hadn't, technically, but she'd let him think she was someone else, someone normal. And now he couldn't unsee the sleek car, the leather wallet, or the way her voice had slipped from warmth to steel in one breath when he accused her of playing a game. He ran a hand over his face and dropped into one of the porch chairs, the wood groaning beneath him. He'd spent so long getting used to quiet, to routine. Wake up, make breakfast, work long hours fixing busted transmissions, get home in time for dinner and bedtime stories. There hadn't been room for anything else. Not since Macy's mother left. He hadn't expected Elira, and now she was gone. The next day, Macy padded into the kitchen as he was flipping eggs in a dented skillet. Her hair stuck out in every direction. He handed her a plate. Is Elira coming back next weekend? He paused, spatula hovering over the pan. I don't know, Macy frowned. Did she get busy? Maybe. He placed the eggs on her plate and avoided her eyes. Eat up, she chewed slowly. Can we go to the same spot anyway? Just in case he wanted to say no, he should have. But instead he nodded. They went the next Saturday and the one after that. Elira never showed. By the third weekend, Macy stopped asking. Wyatt tried to pretend it didn't bother him. He focused on his work, took extra shifts at the garage, fixed the leaky pipe under the sink that he'd been ignoring for months. But every time he sat beside the lake, he found his eyes drifting to the bend in the trees where she used to appear. Then, 3 weeks after she left, he got a call at the garage. He was elbow deep in the engine of a battered minivan when the shop's phone rang. He wiped his hands on a rag and picked it up. Callahan Auto. Mr. Wyatt Callahan. The voice was unfamiliar, male, clipped. Yeah, who's this? I'm calling on behalf of Miss Elira Hastings. She's requested your presence at the Hastings Foundation's charity gala this Friday evening. Wyatt blinked. I think you've got the wrong guy. There's no mistake. The invitation will be delivered to your home this afternoon. Formal attire required. Transportation will be provided. The line went dead before Wyatt could ask another question. He stood there, phone still in hand, heart beating fast. What the hell was she doing? When he got home that night, a black envelope was wedged into the screen door. Inside was an invitation made of heavy cardstock, his name printed in precise gold letters. There was no note. Just a date, a time, and a location, the top floor of the Hastings Hotel downtown. On Friday, he stood in front of his closet for nearly 20 minutes before pulling out the only suit he owned. It still fit, mostly, though the sleeves were tighter around his arms now. He hadn't worn it since his mother's funeral. Macy sat on the bed, swinging her legs. "Where are you going?" "There's a thing, just for tonight." "Will there be dancing?" "I don't know, probably." She tilted her head. "Are you gonna dance?" He hesitated. "Only if someone makes me," she grinned. "I hope Elira makes you." He didn't answer. There was a knock at the door. He opened it to find a man in a black suit standing beside a sleek car that looked like it belonged in a movie. The man nodded once and opened the rear door. The ride downtown felt like something out of a dream. Wyatt kept his hands on his knees, afraid to touch anything. When they pulled up to the hotel, he stared up at the towering glass structure with a sinking feeling in his stomach. The valet opened the door, and Wyatt stepped out, suddenly aware of his scuffed shoes and dated tie. Inside, the lobby was marble and gold. Chandeliers glowed overhead, and a string quartet played softly near the elevator bank. A woman in a crimson dress approached him with a tablet. "Mr. Callahan?" "Yeah, right this way." She led him to a private elevator. When the doors opened on the top floor, he stepped into another world. The ballroom stretched endlessly, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Crystal glasses clinked. Waiters in white gloves passed trays of food he couldn't identify. Guests moved like they belonged there, elegant, polished, untouchable. And then he saw her. Elira stood near the center of the room, speaking to a man in a tailored tuxedo. Her dress shimmered like midnight off one shoulder, hair swept back in a way that made her look like she'd stepped off the cover of a fashion magazine. She turned, as if sensing him. Their eyes met. The man beside her said something, but she didn't respond. She moved toward Wyatt, cutting through the crowd like a current. He didn't breathe until she stopped in front of him. "Hi," she said, voice soft. "Hi, you came." "I almost didn't. I would have understood." He looked around. "This isn't exactly my scene." "I know." She glanced down, then back up. "But I wanted you to see it, the real version of me." He didn't speak. "There's a terrace," she said. "Less noise." He followed her through a pair of glass doors and onto a rooftop terrace lit by soft bulbs strung overhead. The city stretched below them, glittering and alive. "I didn't mean for you to find out like that," Elira said after a long silence. "You could have told me the truth. I didn't know how. You make billion-dollar decisions every day." "But you didn't know how to tell a mechanic the truth," she flinched. "That's fair." He leaned against the railing. "You just disappeared." "I didn't want to pressure you or make Macy part of something complicated. She already was." Elira stepped closer. "I missed you." He looked at her, the woman who had laughed beside his daughter, who had sat beside him in the dirt without once wrinkling her nose. "I thought you were playing a game," he said. "I wasn't." "Then what was this?" She took a breath. "Hope." The word hung between them. "I've spent my whole life building things," she said quietly. "Companies. Empires. And suddenly, I was sitting beside a 6-year-old who told me I didn't know how to make a proper mud pie, and it felt like the first honest thing I'd heard in years." He stared at her, the city behind her like a halo. "I don't know what you want from me. I don't want anything. You invited me here. I needed you to see that I'm not hiding anymore. And what happens now, that's up to you." He didn't move, didn't speak. The wind rustled her dress and the city noise hummed below. Finally, he said, "I'm not going to be a project for you. You're not. I have a kid, I know. I have bills I can't pay on time. I don't care, you should." She stepped even closer, voice low. "I care about how she looks at you like you hung the moon. I care about how you tuck her hair behind her ear when she's asleep. I care that you never once asked me for anything." He looked away. Elira reached for his hand. "Come back with me, just for tonight. Let me show you the rest." He hesitated. Then, slowly, he let her fingers close around his. She smiled, not polished, not poised, just real. Wyatt had never walked through a crowd like this before with a woman like Elira beside him, her hand lightly resting against his arm as if it had always belonged there. The moment they stepped back into the ballroom, the eyes found them. People turned, whispers spread. He kept his jaw tight and his expression unreadable, but every muscle in his body coiled. He didn't belong here, not in this world of tailored tuxedos and champagne that smelled like money. And yet, Elira didn't flinch. She guided him through the glittering room like she wasn't dragging a mechanic from the wrong side of the tracks into a ballroom full of titans. A man with silver hair and a sharp navy suit intercepted them near the bar. His smile was thin, eyes assessing. "Elira," he said. "You've been missed tonight." "I've been right here, Charles," she replied coolly, his gaze flicked to Wyatt. "And your guest is?" "Wyatt Callahan." Wyatt offered a nod but didn't extend a hand. The man didn't either. Charles looked back to Elira. "He's not. In our industry, is he? He's in his own." Wyatt didn't know what kind of professional insult that was supposed to be, but it didn't matter. Elira's tone made it clear that Charles had already overstayed his welcome. She led Wyatt away without another word. "What was that about?" Wyatt asked under his breath once they were out of earshot. "He runs a real estate fund," she said. "He thinks owning buildings makes him important. Does it? It makes him rich. That's not the same thing." Wyatt looked at her sidelong. "And what are you?" She paused, then turned to face him fully. "Someone who's tired of pretending the world makes sense." He didn't know how to answer that. A waitress passed by with a tray of flutes. Wyatt took one and stared at the pale golden liquid. He didn't drink often and never anything that came with bubbles. Still, he took a sip. It was cold, dry, and tasted like something he couldn't afford even if he worked double shifts for a month. Elira leaned in slightly. "Do you want to leave?" He looked at her. "Do you? Every time I walk into these rooms. Then why do you come back?" "Because I built them." Her answer sat heavy between them. "What happens if you stop showing up?" he asked. "Someone else takes the credit." Wyatt finished the last sip and set the flute on a nearby table. "Let's get out of here." This time, she didn't hesitate. They exited through a private elevator near the side of the ballroom. The air changed immediately as they descended, less perfume, less pressure. When the doors opened in the underground garage, a man in a dark uniform opened the door to a glossy black car already waiting. Wyatt hesitated. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere quieter." The driver didn't ask questions. The city blurred past the tinted windows, and Wyatt sat in silence, watching Elira as she stared out into the night. She wasn't wearing any jewelry, not even earrings. Just that midnight blue dress and an expression that shifted between exhaustion and something softer when she glanced at him. They didn't speak again until the car pulled into an underground entrance below an enormous building that stretched high into the clouds. Wyatt stepped out and looked up. "This yours too?" he asked, half knowing the answer. "Top 3 floors," she said, already walking toward the private elevator. He followed, not because he knew what he was doing, but because turning around didn't make sense anymore. The elevator opened directly into her penthouse. Wyatt had never seen anything like it. The ceiling soared above them, clean lines of steel and glass catching the city lights. Sculptural furniture sat on pristine floors, and a wall of windows offered a view that didn't look real. He stepped forward slowly, staring out at the skyline. Macy would have loved this. Elira moved past him and toed off her heels, setting them beside the door. She walked barefoot across the marble before disappearing into what looked like a kitchen tucked behind a curved glass partition. He followed the sound of cabinets opening and found her pouring water into a kettle. "Want tea?" she asked without turning. "Sure." She looked over her shoulder. "You don't have to pretend I'm not. I drink tea sometimes." She arched an eyebrow. "Really?" He leaned against the frame. "I've had it. Once." That drew a laugh from her, not the polite kind she used at the gala, but something deeper. She pulled 2 mugs from a cabinet and dropped a sachet into each. "Did you think I brought you here to impress you?" she asked, voice low. He shook his head. "No, I think you brought me here because you wanted me to see the whole picture." She set the mugs on the counter and looked at him. "I've spent my life making decisions that keep people comfortable. I've learned how to be what they need. A leader, a fixer, a shield. Who are you when no one needs anything?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know." He stepped forward slowly until there was barely a breath between them. "You ever been to a school play?" he asked suddenly. She blinked. "What?" "A kindergarten play, folding chairs, kids in cardboard costumes, crayons on the walls, that kind of thing." She shook her head. "No," he nodded. "Macy's got one next month. She's a tree. She's very proud of it." Elira smiled faintly. "I'd like to see that. I'll save you a seat." They stood there, the sound of the kettle humming behind them, steam curling into the air. "I'm not the man people expect you to be with," he said. "That's the point." He nodded slowly. "You sure about that?" "I'm sure. I'm tired of everyone expecting me to choose what looks right instead of what feels right." He reached for one of the mugs as she handed it over. Their fingers brushed. "I'm not good at this," he admitted. "Neither am I." She took her mug and walked to the windows. He followed, both of them staring out into the night. "You ever miss it?" he asked after a while. "Miss what?" "Before all this." She thought for a long moment. "I miss not having to wonder if someone only wants me for what I can give them." He looked at her. "I've got nothing to take. That's why I'm here." They stood in silence for a while, the city glittering below them. Eventually, Wyatt glanced over. "I should head back." "Macy's got soccer in the morning." Elira looked at him. "Can I drive you?" He shook his head. "You've done enough." She walked him to the private elevator. Before the doors opened, she reached out and touched his sleeve. "I meant what I said," she murmured. "About wanting to be part of your world, not just visit it." He met her eyes. "Then don't disappear again." "I won't." The doors slid open. Wyatt stepped inside. As the elevator descended, he realized for the first time that he wasn't trying to protect himself anymore. He was trying to figure out where she fit and how to make room for her. When he got home, Macy was curled up on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and a half-empty bowl of popcorn in her lap. Clara, the teenage neighbor who babysat sometimes, was dozing in the armchair. Macy looked up. "Did you dance?" Wyatt smiled faintly. "Not this time," she yawned. "Next time, maybe." He tucked her in and sat beside her bed for a long time after her eyes closed. Next time. He didn't know what their lives would look like with Elira in them, but for the first time in years, the idea of next time didn't scare him. It felt like hope. Macy tugged the elastic tighter around her ponytail and adjusted her paper leaf crown with the seriousness of a surgeon preparing for an operation. Wyatt knelt beside her in the kindergarten hallway, surrounded by the chaotic noise of kids in cardboard wings, felt animal ears and uneven face paint. "You nervous, Bug?" he asked, smoothing a wrinkle in her brown costume. She shook her head. "Trees don't get nervous. We're just supposed to sway and be calm." "Well, you're the best tree in the forest," she grinned, missing one of her front teeth. "Is Elira coming?" He glanced at the clock near the classroom. "She said she would." Macy nodded and joined her classmates as they filed into the gymnasium. Wyatt stood and walked toward the rows of folding chairs that filled quickly with parents juggling snacks, siblings, and programs printed on neon green paper. He spotted an empty seat near the middle and squeezed past a woman carrying a toddler who was already chewing on a juice box. As he sat, his eyes scanned the entrance again, still no sign of her. He didn't know why he felt that familiar tension building in the back of his neck. She hadn't given him any reason to doubt her since the gala. If anything, she'd been more present than he could have imagined. Trips to the lake had resumed. They'd taken Macy to a Saturday puppet show at the library. Elira had even tried a gas station breakfast sandwich just to prove she could. But still, this felt different. This wasn't a glittering ballroom or a marble penthouse. This was loud, sticky, and full of construction paper glued by shaky hands. It was his world. A hand touched his shoulder. He turned and there she was. Elira wore jeans and a soft navy sweater, her hair pulled back into a low braid. No makeup, no heels. Just her, holding a juice pouch and a pack of fruit snacks like she'd been doing this forever. "I got the last Capri Sun from the vending machine," she whispered as she slid into the chair beside him. It felt like a high-stakes auction. He leaned close. "You made it." She looked at him. "Of course I did." The lights dimmed. A teacher stepped onto the stage and welcomed everyone with the enthusiasm of someone who'd survived a week of glitter and glue guns. Then the curtain opened, and a parade of 5-year-olds shuffled into view. Macy stood in the center, her arms outstretched like branches, swaying gently with the music. Wyatt watched her, heart full and throat tight. Elira's hand found his, fingers lacing with his without hesitation. When the show ended and the applause settled, they waited near the side hallway for the kids to come out. Macy barreled straight into Elira, hugging her waist with a triumphant squeal. "Did you see me sway? You were perfect," Elira said, crouching to her level. "I've never seen a more graceful tree." "Daddy said that too." Great minds. Wyatt watched them, something warm settling deep inside him. He hadn't imagined this. He wasn't waiting for it to slip away anymore. They stopped for ice cream afterward. Macy picked cotton candy swirl and stained her tongue blue. Elira picked pistachio and Wyatt stuck with chocolate fudge. They sat outside on a metal bench as the late afternoon sun softened over the rooftops. "Can we go to the lake tomorrow?" Macy asked, legs kicking back and forth. Wyatt looked at Elira. "You free?" She nodded. "I'll bring the lemonade," Macy grinned. "The fancy kind." "You bet." When they dropped Macy at home later, Clara, the neighbor girl, came over to babysit for a few hours. Wyatt had promised Macy they'd pick a weekend to go camping soon, and Clara had agreed to bring over her family's old gear so they could sort through it. With Macy content and Clara settled in, Elira and Wyatt drove in silence. Not to the lake. Not to the penthouse. She didn't tell him where they were going. He didn't ask. When they pulled onto a quiet private road lined with budding trees and wildflowers, Wyatt raised an eyebrow. "You'll see," she said. The car stopped in front of a pale brick house with wide porches and blue shutters. It sat on a gentle slope overlooking a winding creek. A swing hung from the front tree, swaying slightly in the breeze. Wyatt stepped out slowly. Elira joined him on the front path, keys in her hand. "I bought this place 2 years ago," she said. "I didn't know why, it was too quiet. Too far from everything I thought mattered, but I couldn't bring myself to sell it." He looked at her. "I want you to see it, not because it's expensive, not because it's mine, because it could be ours." His throat tightened. "Elira, you once said you didn't know where I fit. I think I do now." She walked up the steps and unlocked the door. Inside, the house was sunlit and warm, nothing showy. Hardwood floors, cream walls. A kitchen that looked like it had been used for more than takeout. A hallway lined with built-in bookshelves. A window seat overlooking the creek. He moved slowly through the space, absorbing every detail. The air smelled faintly of lavender and something like possibility. "There's a room upstairs that gets morning light," Elira said softly behind him. "I thought Macy could paint in there, or keep a reading nook." "If she wants," Wyatt turned. "You're serious." "I want to build something that doesn't come with stock reports or quarterly earnings. I want to wake up and make pancakes that burn a little around the edges. I want to fight over whose turn it is to fold laundry. I want to be late for soccer games and school plays and still show up anyway." He crossed the room to her. "I want all of that," she said. "With you, with Macy, if you'll let me." He didn't answer with words. He kissed her. Not like the first time where it had been hesitant and charged and uncertain. This was quieter, surer, the kind of kiss that said yes without needing a speech. When they pulled apart, Elira rested her forehead against his. "I never thought I'd find this," she whispered. "Me neither," he said. "But I'm not letting it go." Later, they stood on the back porch, arms wrapped around each other as the sky turned dusky pink. The creek bubbled gently below. A few birds dipped through the trees. "This place doesn't feel like a palace," Wyatt said. "It's not. It feels like home." She smiled. "Then let's make it one." He turned to her. "You sure you want mornings with cereal spills and last-minute school projects and a kid who asks 100 questions before breakfast? I want every second of it." A breeze swept through the porch, lifting a loose strand of her hair. "And I want you," she added. "Exactly as you are, no makeovers, no upgrades, just you." He kissed her again, his hand at the small of her back. "Then you've got me." 2 months later, they moved in. Macy picked the bedroom with the slanted ceiling and asked to paint it light purple. Elira let her. Wyatt built a tree swing in the backyard, and Elira surprised them one morning with a golden retriever puppy she named Juniper. On Sunday mornings, they made waffles. On Friday nights, they curled up on the couch, Elira in leggings and socks, Macy between them, Wyatt's arm around them both. There were messy days. Days when the pipes leaked or Macy got sick or Wyatt came home with grease on his shirt and Elira's conference call ran late. But every night they ended up in the same place together. Love didn't need chandeliers or private elevators or rooftop views. It just needed a lake, a kid, the right person, and a chance, and they took it. Every single day. The first time Wyatt brought Elira to meet his father, it rained so hard the windshield wipers squealed in protest. "Are you sure it's okay we're coming today?" Elira asked, glancing at the gray curtain sweeping down the mountainside. Her boots tapped nervously against the truck floor. "He's expecting us," Wyatt said, gripping the wheel. "Besides, he'll be thrilled to know I'm seeing someone who hasn't rebuilt a carburetor for fun." Elira gave a short laugh, but her fingers remained tightly laced in her lap. "I just don't want to be too much. Or not enough." "He's the one who taught me not to care about either," Wyatt said. "He'll like you. He might ask you to help him with the vegetable garden, though. I can try not to kill anything. He never managed to keep the tomatoes alive, so you're already on even ground." Wyatt's father lived in a small cabin tucked into the woods just outside the edge of town, the kind of place where cell reception vanished and the only sounds came from birds and the occasional wind chime. The driveway was narrow and flooded in a few spots, but Wyatt guided the truck through with practiced ease. The old man was already on the porch, a mug in hand and a blanket across his lap. He stood slowly as they pulled up. Wyatt stepped out first, waved, then walked around to help Elira down from the truck. Her breath caught slightly as she took in the wooden porch with its crooked steps and rows of potted plants. "Dad," Wyatt said, "this is Elira." The old man's eyes were sharp under bushy brows. He extended a hand. "Name's Raymond." Elira took it. "It's nice to meet you." "You're prettier than the last one," he said simply. "And taller," Wyatt winced. "Dad," Raymond just shrugged. "What, it's true," Elira smiled. "I'll take it as a compliment." Inside, the fireplace already crackled. Raymond didn't talk much, didn't ask the usual questions. Instead, he poured them tea, passed around a plate of biscuits that tasted faintly of cinnamon and burned edges, and asked Elira about the wildest thing she'd ever done. She tilted her head thoughtfully. "I once bought a yacht on a dare." Raymond let out a rare, raspy chuckle. "You keep her, son." They stayed for hours, weathering the storm in the safety of the cabin. When the rain finally stopped and the sky lightened to a soft pewter, Raymond stood and patted Wyatt's shoulder. "She's got the kind of eyes that don't flinch," he said quietly. "You hold on to that." Back at the house, Macy greeted them at the door with a drawing in hand, Elira, Wyatt, and herself holding hands under a crooked tree. "I made us a family," she said proudly, waving the picture like a flag. Elira crouched beside her, her voice catching just slightly. "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Macy beamed. "I want it on the fridge forever." It was framed and hung in the hallway by the following morning. Spring melted into early summer. The days stretched longer, golden and warm, and life settled into something that surprised Wyatt with its quiet joy. Elira didn't just fit, she belonged. She planted flowers with Macy, burned pancakes with him on lazy Sundays, and once showed up at the auto shop with sandwiches for the whole crew just because. There were no grand announcements, no proposals, just the steady, certain way she began to stay. One evening, Wyatt found her in the backyard, barefoot in the grass, her phone forgotten on the patio table. She was watching Macy chase Juniper in wide loops around the swing set. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You're not even pretending to check your email anymore." "I resigned this morning," Wyatt blinked. "You what?" "I stepped down as CEO. I kept my shares, but I'm not running the company anymore." It took a moment for the words to sink in. "Are you okay with that?" "I've been preparing for it for months. I just needed to be sure I wasn't running away from something, but I'm not. I'm running toward something else." She turned to face him, her expression open and steady. "I'm not interested in building empires anymore, Wyatt. I want to build a life." He kissed her, sun warmed and breathless. "You already are." That summer, the three of them took a road trip in Wyatt's old truck. No destination, just a map, a cooler full of snacks, and a list of state parks pinned to the glove compartment. They hiked. They camped. They roasted marshmallows. Macy declared she wanted to live in a tent forever, until it rained all night and her sleeping bag got soaked. Elira never once reached for a laptop. She didn't take a single call. She learned how to make fire without matches and taught Macy how to skip stones. When they returned home, the house felt fuller than ever. A few weeks later, they hosted a backyard dinner for Wyatt's co-workers and their families. Elira grilled corn with Wyatt, barefoot on the deck, a dish towel slung over her shoulder. Macy ran through the sprinkler with the neighbor kids, shrieking. No one talked about money. No one cared. After everyone left and the stars came out, Wyatt sat on the porch steps with Elira leaning against his side. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous start." She laughed. "I want to do something with the property behind the creek. There's enough space to build something small. A studio, maybe a greenhouse." He looked at her. "For you, for all of us, for whatever comes next." He was quiet for a moment. "You've already given us more than I ever thought we'd have." She shook her head. "I haven't given you anything, Wyatt. We built this together." He reached for her hand. "Then let's keep building, as long as it takes." Years passed. Macy grew. Elira started a small foundation focused on childhood literacy, but she ran it from home, usually while wearing socks with cartoon frogs and drinking her new favorite gas station coffee. Wyatt expanded the garage, brought in 2 more mechanics, and finally got to fix up the old motorcycle he'd kept in the shed for a decade. They still went to the lake every Saturday. Sometimes they fished. Sometimes they just sat. Sometimes Elira brought a book and Macy brought her sketchpad, and Wyatt brought nothing but himself, which was more than enough. One autumn morning, Wyatt walked into the kitchen to find Elira standing at the counter in a faded hoodie, holding a mug with a chip in the rim. She turned toward him with eyes brighter than usual. "I was thinking," she said slowly, "that it might be nice if we made it official." He raised an eyebrow. "You're proposing to me with bedhead and yesterday's hoodie. Do you need a ring and a white dress to say yes? Not from you." He wrapped his arms around her, pulled her close, and whispered into her ear, "Name the day." They got married in the backyard under the tree with the swing. Macy stood beside them as they said their vows. The guest list was small, the flowers were wild, the cake was lopsided. The music came from a Bluetooth speaker that glitched halfway through their first dance. It was perfect. Afterward, as the sun dipped low and fireflies blinked over the grass, Wyatt kissed his wife beside the swing they'd built together and whispered, "You were never too much. You were just enough to change everything." She smiled against his mouth. "And you were everything I never knew I needed." Years later, when Macy graduated high school, they hosted a party under string lights in the same backyard. She wore a crown of daisies and read aloud a speech she'd written about what made a family. Elira cried. Wyatt did too, but blamed it on the wind. They never stopped choosing each other, not once. Not when things got messy, not when life threw them sideways. Not when Macy went off to college and the house felt too quiet. They filled it again with laughter, with friends, with new dreams. And every Saturday, no matter what, they still went to the lake together. Always.